you pass me that brown paperback from my case, please? Are they still following us?
Yes.
Is there one of them? Just hum if there is.
Hmm?
Is he looking at us?
Hmm?
Does he have just one hand on the steering wheel?
Mm-hmm.
When you hear something that sounds like a gunshot, drive.
Did you get it?
Let's just hope he doesn't drive as quickly as he moves.
I got news for you. He does.
Take a right. And then an immediate left.
Released in August of 2015, Guy Ritchie's The Man from U.N.C.L.E. brings to life an early Cold War-era spy thriller reminiscent of a classic debonair Bond film. Adapted from the 1960s television series of the same name, Ritchie's film brings together Henry Cavill as the steely yet smooth Napoleon Solo, an art thief turned CIA operative, and Armie Hammer as Ilya Kuryakin, Solo's angry KGB counterpart. Despite their country's tensions, they are brought together to recover a missing nuclear scientist and his atomic bomb research from the hands of a billionaire Nazi-sympathizing couple intending to use both the scientist and his knowledge to further their own fascist nuclear arsenal. Along to help is Alicia Vikander's portrayal of feisty German auto mechanic Gabby Teller, the daughter of the aforementioned nuclear scientist. Being a modern-day film set in 1963, the creators of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. must deal with the burden of creating not only a unique and captivating spy film, but one that is historically accurate to the early Cold War period in which it is set. In a time of intense political turmoil and rising national tensions, this is not an easy feat to recreate in the 21st century. The question is, does The Man from U.N.C.L.E. do a good job of this? You'll be surprised to hear that the answer is not as black or white as it seems. As with any spy film, action scenes and womanizing characters are almost always paired with some sort of contrived, vaguely unrealistic but nonetheless entertaining plot. As previously mentioned, Solo and Kuryakin's potentially world-saving mission is to retrieve the scientist Dr. Udo Teller and his nuclear research from the villains. However, their respective governments, the CIA and the KGB, have secretly ordered them to retrieve the research for their own country's purposes, at whatever cost.
It is vital you retrieve Dr. Teller and the computer disk.
They are the key to the U.S.A. winning the arms race.
Kill the Russian, if necessary.
Убей американца, если необходимо.
This motivation and competitiveness between the two characters is accurate to the 1960s time period. After the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962, tensions were high between America and the Soviet Union. Thus, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara revealed the Mutual Assured Destruction Strategy. This forced the Soviet Union to take into consideration the concept of the complete destruction of both sides during an atomic exchange. However, the threat of nuclear war soon re-emerged when new information rose detailing the development of the anti-ballistic missile system by the Soviet Union as from up as early as 1956, which could intercept missiles in flight. Shadowed by the impending threat of a nuclear war so soon after the temporary relief created by the MAD strategy, which was only implemented a year before the events of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., it is clear that the motivations of both Solo and Kuryakin to be the first to recover the disk for their country are well-founded and accurate for both American and Soviet spies at the time.
Politics being what they are?
This motivation essentially drives the plot of the story. Their mission, save the world and progress their country above all others. Despite this, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is not without fault. Ritchie's film does not seem to have any large historical inaccuracies at first. However, upon further inspection, the reason for this is because it doesn't utilize its Cold War setting to its maximum potential. It is marketed as a historical Cold War era film, and at first glance, definitely seems like it. You've got your spies from countries heavily involved in the Cold War. You've got television broadcasts from President John F. Kennedy, and you've got a plot revolving around the potential destruction of the world by a nuclear warhead. The pressure of the competing arms race is palpable and drives the banter between characters.
Loving your work, Peril.
But that's all that it provides. They rarely refer to any past Cold War affairs in the span of the whole film, only briefly touching upon Gabby's time in East Berlin. To put it simply, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is a Cold War film that doesn't really talk about the Cold War. The film is riddled with anachronisms and factual errors that poke holes in the overall historical accuracy of the film. The only reason that Ritchie is able to pass off The Man from U.N.C.L.E. as a historical film to suit his spy thriller fantasies is because he wraps the whole movie in so much 60s style that it is easy to forget what you're watching. The costume design is so meticulously designed to reproduce the swinging 60s vibe, but in the chicest way possible. We never see the characters in anything but stylish suits, elaborate print dresses, and large pieces of jewelry. This constantly forces us to view the film through a retro lens. In attempting to do so, the film throws away historical accuracy for the sake of aesthetics and themes. Within the first few minutes of the film, a map of Berlin is shown. Here, it suggests that Berlin was simply divided by Russian-controlled East Berlin and the American-controlled West Berlin. In reality, the United States only controlled Southwest Berlin. Northwest Berlin was ruled by the French, and Central West Berlin was British territory. This error is made despite showing a news headline in the first 30 seconds of the film stating the four-way divide. Simple anachronisms and factual errors like this are scattered throughout The Man from U.N.C.L.E., some being more blatant than others. Throughout the film, they consistently refer to the enrichment of uranium as the primary source for atomic bombs.
The main ingredient of an atom bomb is enriched uranium.
Which means they've succeeded in enriching the uranium.
Does this mean anything to you?
It's part of centrifuge for refining uranium.
In reality, only one atomic bomb at the time had been made using uranium, and that was Little Boy, which was dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. Another uranium core atomic bomb would not be created until the development of the Chinese government's 569 in 1964, a year after the events of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It is more likely that Dr. Teller would have been researching the enrichment of plutonium due to the ease in which it is produced compared to uranium. Perhaps simple and passing errors like these could be overlooked for the sake of the main historical spy element of the film. But even the greatest driving plot device of the film is an anachronism in itself. In the film, Dr. Teller's nuclear research is stored in an aesthetically pleasing light blue, conveniently palm-sized computer disk.
And whoever has that disk will simply be the most powerful nation in the world.
Computer disks this size had only just been invented in 1963 and would not have been available for use as Dr. Teller did. In reality, the 1960s disks were 14 to 15 inches large and much heavier. See, the reason why Ritchie is able to get away with this hit-and-miss selective history.
Good plan. All we have to do is get over 2 20-foot walls and a minefield. Now what?
Is because he sells the idea of a retro espionage flick so well. Every scene of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. contains an arsenal of witty banter.
Take another left through the window.
Spy gadgetry, 60s pop music, action and elegancy. The audience does not care that Kuryakin's battery-powered CO2 laser, which he used to cut through the fence, wasn't invented until 1964.
CO2 laser.
Because the very idea of a modern gadget seduces the viewer into the world of 60s espionage.
Coming?
The audience pays no attention when Solo listens to a Peppino Gagliardi song released 4 years later. Because the film is already so saturated with retro Italian music, it provides such a sleek vintage vibe to the comedic scene. So to answer the question, does The Man from U.N.C.L.E. accurately portray the events and life during the 1960s? It's partially a yes and partially a no, but the no becomes fairly insignificant when you look at the whole scope of things. Guy Ritchie's main goal in creating this film was to pay homage to the era of the 60s, in which that time spawned the beginning of suave espionage flicks.
They had a certain style to them, which we were interested in harking back to the sort of genesis of spy movies, what we were most impressed by when we were kids, I suppose.
So although the overall historical accuracy of the film becomes just slightly blurred, these imperfections and flaws are not visible when viewed from an objective perspective. Nonetheless, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. offers the excitement of escapism and the humor of witty banter that comes with the spy genre, effectively wrapped in style and chic elegance, creating an ideal popcorn flick that leaves the audience reminiscing about the nostalgic aesthetic of the 60s.